May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. What is a vocation? What is your calling? What has God asked you to do? What is your purpose in life? Many of the prophets begin by writing about how they were called to be prophets, how the word of the Lord came to them on this date, at this time, the Lord spoke to them, and this is what he said. Samuel's calling is particularly vivid, and the story of Samuel's calling contains far more detail than any of the other prophets in the Bible. We know details of Samuel's family, his birth, his upbringing. The Bible tells us that Samuel was born into a troubled time when the Jewish people were not close to God. It tells us that he was given by his mother to service in the temple. We know that Samuel was called to be a prophet as a small boy, that he was too young to understand what was going on. So what is a vocation? What has God called you to do? Nathanael has a similar story. God sees him sitting beneath a fig tree. Philip goes to call him, and Nathanael is astonished to discover that Jesus knew him and had always known him. I have heard of vocations described in one of two ways. The first type is those people who have always known, with absolute certainty. Little girls who baptize their dolls and go on to become priests. Little boys who play with stethoscopes, listen to doggy hearts, and grow up to become doctors. These are the Samuels and Nathaniels of the world for whom there is absolute clarity that God himself has spoken to them and they know their purpose in the world. And then there are others who have no idea whatsoever. They drift along in life, not really knowing what is to become of them. They try a few things, nothing really sticks. And it's described as being like standing in a corridor with many doorways. And you keep trying door after door, but they're all locked, except one. And that is the door through which they step. And these are people who end up in a certain role, a certain job, a certain place in the world, almost by accident. They feel as if they've fallen into it. So what is your calling? What is your purpose in life? We are a church. We are a community. And be assured that we all have a place in life, in the church, in that community. Have faith that God is working his purpose out and that we are part of that purpose, part of that plan, every single one of us. But also be aware that in that hope there is also a warning that God's calling is not always a comfortable one. The message that Samuel was asked to give Eli was a troubling one. Of God's judgment on Eli and his family, and it was so troubling that Eli had to threaten the boy Samuel to tell him what the Lord had said. The calling that Nathanael received was to be a follower of Jesus, and therefore not a life of comfort and pleasure, but a life of persecution and martyrdom. We are not all called to a pleasant vocation in our community, where everybody gets along, nobody rocks the boat, and sometimes we are called to challenge that community, to challenge the status quo. So how do you know what is your calling? What God has asked you to do? Have you ever found yourself standing in a spot, looking around and thinking, things are just not right? And you are saying to yourself, well, someone needs to do something about this. Maybe, sometimes, just sometimes, it's actually God telling you that that someone you are looking for is you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost.